Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And today I am joined by Zsuzsanna Griga. Hello, Zsuzsanna.
Hello, Anna Elizabeth. Nice to see you.
And you, now you and I are going to be doing something together on the 20th of April
Yes.
from 10 to 4:30. It is, of course, our karmic astrology seminar at the Astrological Lodge of London. And your talk is called Karmic Layers, and that is intriguing. What do you mean by karmic layers?
Okay, there is the natal chart. Think about it. Before the telescope, there were only 7 visible planets, actually 2 luminaries and 5 planets. And it was a pretty empty chart if you think about it. I mean, it's just nothing really there. Of course, if you look at the medieval astrologers and their techniques, with all those face and term and whatever, I'm not even looking into that. It could also be quite complicated. But the fact remains that there was only 7 visible planets. And then with the telescope, all of a sudden we had Uranus, which totally disrupted, as its namesake, the beautiful order, the beautiful building of astrology with 7 planets, 12 signs, 3 modalities and 4 elements. So you have these 3s and 4s and 7s and 12s, and all of a sudden you had this newcomer that is just busting in like a how do you call the person? A party crasher, right? Yours is the party crasher, really. And all of a sudden, the astrologers didn't know what to do. And of course, then came the 3 main asteroids, which for a long time were considered feminine planets. Quite interesting. Minor feminine planets. I have an astrology textbook in English, which has a separate chapter for them. And they are called not dwarf planets or anything like that, so minor planets. Quite interesting. And of course, for quite a while, there were only 4 of them. And for 42 years, there were just 4. And then all of a sudden, the 5th, Australia, was also spotted in sometime in 1846, I think. And all of a sudden, astronomers realized, not astrologers, that, okay, Australia is so tiny that there's no way you can call it anything near a planet. And that is when they reconsider the whole concept, what this can be. And of course, after that, there was no turning back, because all these amateur astronomers were trying to find new ones. And so that was the revolution of asteroids. And then with Chiron came the revolution of centaurs. And if you are familiar with the notion, the psychological notion that you can only spot something when and if you believe that that thing can exist, okay, then it is also very, very intriguing that all of a sudden we see all these new things collectively, our group of mankind, anyhow. All of a sudden, we were able to spot new things up in the sky. Yes, of course, with the help of the telescope and with the help of Hubble and all these new gadgets. And so especially after year 2000, there were like 1,500 centaurs and TNOs and ETNOs. I don't know whether ETNO means extreme TNO with the orbital period of 36,000 years and things like that. So all of a sudden, you had a lot of things. And you might ask, this is something that I get confronted with. The question of why are we playing with dirty snowballs, okay? And I always answer, okay, if someone is given a name, that name means the thing has given a destiny. And that destiny is going to reflect back to you if you have that particular object tightly conjunct, for instance, your sun and something. But let me tell you something. This is something I always say. I always tell as an anecdote. Bill Gates has asteroid Monica spot on his midheaven. Had he come to me 40 years ago, of course, I couldn't have told him what would happen with the Monica, but I could have told him that a certain Monica will have a big impact on his future or his aspirations or goals. So see what I mean? So mainly it's the asteroids and centaurs that comprise at least one hidden layer of the chart. So the way I look at it, there are the visible planets, the invisible planets, and then the asteroids and centaurs. And so you can print the chart, and then you can actually look and see what is behind. And there are a number of other stuff which I'm not going to bore you with, but so just to explain to you that that's mainly it. That we see something in the chart wheel, and then we explore what else is there. And of course, the method is always the same. I look at the chart, I try to assess what is there. For instance, if I see a retrograde Venus, or if I see I don't know, an out of bounds, but I don't see an out of bounds Mars. But for instance, out of bounds planets are also they also comprise the deep layers of a chart. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, that's very interesting, because of course, when we're looking at things like the asteroids, what we're doing is we're adding nuance and adding to the story as we understand it of the individual. So you're looking at the centaurs, you're looking at asteroids in addition to the planets in the chart. How are you doing that in terms of the karmic story?
I always look at the chart itself. And whatever crops up right there, for instance, retrograde planets in the 12th house, planets in the around the IC, anything that catches my eye. I've been doing this for 38 years. So you can imagine, actually, a whole bunch of new centaurs and TNOs have been spotted ever since. So it's a never-ending story, really. So what I do is I look at the chart first. I try to assess the main themes, and then I look at practically everything. And I mean everything. There's this wonderful website, serenu.com, which has all the named asteroids and centaurs there. And of course, not to speak about the fixed stars, because that's another whole bunch of things. And also the so-called galactic points. So as you can see, there are layers upon layers. That is why that takes a lot of time, of course. But what's interesting is the chart is revealing itself slowly. I'm looking at these layers, something catches my eye, then I have an idea, then I go to serenu.com. I have these groups of asteroids, let's say health asteroids, or I don't know, mothering, motherhood, mother goddesses, all kinds of stuff. Atlantean asteroids, Egyptian asteroids, things like that. And then what I do is I just copy and paste the numbers, and then it comes up, and then I see if anything crops up. And then it gives me, first of all, the story. Sometimes it gives me the reassurance that I saw something right. And it also gives me, I work a lot with mythology. Luckily, I was a bookmonger when I was 12. Okay, I started to read when I was 4. And actually, when my tonsils were taken out at the age of 6, I took a very big, thick book with me at the hospital, and nobody believed me that I was reading it. So I started to read a lot of mythology for some reason, and it's there. So all of a sudden, when I see certain topics, and then I find the relevant asteroid or centaur, then it gives me reassurance. And the funny part is, if I tell the mythology to the client, all of a sudden she says, "Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. That's how I feel." Oh, thank you. So it's quite it's quite rewarding to work with them.
Indeed, and everything you said about the mythology, I resonate with that, because when I'm explaining things to clients, I often just tell them the story. and I don't have to do much more because they get
Yes.
it,
Yes.
recognize the story in the story that I'm telling them. And so it's so you're looking at the chart and you're looking, and then you're adding further layers.
Yes.
And because that's it, my own talk is about Chiron, Pholus, and Nessus.
Perfect.
So there's a little bit of an echo there. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the stories of those three within the charts, and then I'm asking the question, how does that relate to the karmic points in the chart? And so this is a exact what I'm doing is a kind of working example also of what you're doing, where you're adding more. In terms of the asteroids, are there any that to you immediately draw your attention towards there being specific karmic issues?
Well, there's asteroid karma. Then there's the goddesses of destiny, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, and Moira, and a number of others. It depends on what type of karma we are talking about. But actually, these 4, 5 ones are really the karma energies. Yeah.
And so how does that relate to something like Pluto and the North Node, which we know to be very karmic points in the chart? Are they echoing it? What is your experience of that?
Sometimes they show us completely different stories. First, let's take Pluto, which has a very bad press, I'm sure you know, because it was spotted in 1930, which was not a very, very nice period if you think about European history, especially afterwards. So yeah, he's the lord of the underworld. Yes, it's he because he never shows himself, of course, all kinds of hidden manipulation, power struggles, blah blah blah. At the same time, Pluto is maybe because I have Pluto my ascendant, I look at it a little bit differently. Pluto is power and transformation, and how you utilize your power, and how and why and for what reason you are able to or willing to transform. So and the nodes, of course, the nodes are very, very important. Well, actually, when I started my work as a karmic astrology almost 40 years ago, I was actually working with the nodes almost exclusively. And of course, Chiron. I just explained to someone the other day that actually Judy Hall's book fell on my head. I was in the States and I was looking in the psychology section, and all of a sudden, it was really spooky. I was reaching up, and her book, The Karmic Journey, flew out of the shelves, hit my head, and landed at my feet. And I looked at it and I picked it up. And I said, this is what I need. I want to learn from this woman. So it was very, very, a very decisive moment in my life. And of course, she was very important. She thought that Pluto is very important. Her most wonderful book is The Hades Moon, which really tells you everything about the moon Pluto and the Scorpio moon and the role of Pluto. And then, of course, Liz Green has a wonderful book on Pluto as well. So I think that the importance of Pluto in karmic astrology is very well detected, but there are a lot more than that.
Yes, indeed. Well, yes, speaking as a fellow Pluto on the ascendant,
Why am I not surprised? Yeah.
yes, I can understand exactly what you're saying about the matters of power. And I think actually it's something you said there was also very important, um, because you were talking about different types of karma. And of course, that's the thing, that's why it's good to look at different aspects in the chart or different components of the chart, because then we're getting different stories. If I'm doing past life regression work with some of my clients, they might regress to different lifetimes that are very connected, because there's the same thread coming
Of
through.
course, always, yeah.
Not always, interestingly. That's the
Sometimes it's the other way around.
sometimes, because what happens is that you can get the thread coming through that's relevant to the issue that we're working to resolve now. It's the very reason why we're having the regression. But occasionally, when we're working, we can get different lifetimes that appear to have very little or no connection to what's being worked on in the moment. And I think what that's showing is that perhaps there is a particular mandate for something to work on in one life as the concentrated effort of the soul, if I can put it like that. But then there's also the possibility that there are other smaller themes that feed into the
Oh,
main
yeah,
theme,
definitely. Yes.
and that we're just getting these little glimpses of those to put on a shelf to look at on another day and think about. So I think it's a very, what you said about different types of karma is very relevant, because there could be karma around any issue to
Of
do with.
course, yeah. Yeah. What I always say, I usually say two things. Number one is there's no compulsory karma. Now, this is something that the Buddhist or anyone who is related to Eastern philosophy totally rejects. What I mean by that is that, okay, karma grows when you feed it. And the more energy you pack into a karmic issue, the bigger it becomes. So, and this is something that again Judy Hall called the karma of grace, that you can actually say, and you can say that you are stepping out of this, kind of like when Alcoholics Anonymous, the way they say, yes, I'm an alcoholic, I'm not, but and I'm trying to step out of it. I will always be an alcoholic. Yes, I will always carry this karma, but I can neglect it. I can say that I'm putting this on the shelf. And I'm going to put my energy and effort in this life into something that is more useful or more valuable or more rewarding. And it's not that I'm not, so it's not disregarding the whole completely, but saying that I'm not feeding it with energy. And that is what I say when I say that there's no compulsory karma. You can always step out of it on your own. If it's a family karma or even a relationship karma, is more difficult. But you yourself, you can distance yourself from it, if you understand what I mean. And it's not, you don't actually need to deal with every issue in one lifetime. That's what it is. And if you can show the client that the reason why he or she is stuck is because he feeds the karmic issue with too much vehemence, and because sometimes there's no solution. There's no solution sometimes. And the only way out is the way up, and saying, okay, fine, I'm distancing myself and I'm not going to feed this anymore. And then slowly, I'm not saying it resolves itself, but actually, speaking about the Buddhists, there's a very interesting Zen technique. When I just heard, I learned this from a Zen monk. And he said that if you have any issue that you can't resolve, try to meditate. So just meditate a little bit on the issue, and then try to find an empty drawer in your head. Well, the older you are, the less empty drawers you have, but pack around a little bit and then empty a drawer and put the issue in it and close the drawer. And in 3 days, you will find a solution. Either you will realize that it's no longer important, or something will come up, or someone will come up. It is always true. It's all, when someone is dying, of course, or terminally ill, or when your house burned down. So I'm not talking about really big things, but small things that can really poison your life. And sometimes you won't be able to resolve it. You need some time and distance. And if you give it to yourself, gives this distance, it might resolve by itself, even without doing anything. I'm not saying that listen, I have a lot of cardinals, but all my angles are in fixed signs, which means that I want to do everything. I want to finish everything. So it's not that I'm not putting energy into this. What I'm saying is that sometimes even I realize that there's no way I can do anything at this moment in time. So let's distance myself and let's give it a try. Maybe it will resolve. And sooner or later it will, or it will come up, as less important or less burdensome.
What you really, I think, are highlighting is the fact that we can break free. And I think that that's that whole debate about fate. But from your perspective, it's about breaking free. And I think in this context, absolutely, it is correct, because the mandate might be to work on certain things, but that in itself is a mandate to break free, to break that pattern, to break the cycle. And
Either way.
yeah,
Either
absolutely.
way.
And so, what you're saying is, let it go for a bit, this thing that's haunting you, and the resolution will present itself. And I think that idea of feeding it with the energy, yeah, absolutely, we are bound to that fate as long as we choose to allow ourselves to be bound by it.
Exactly.
And that's like a really kind of challenging statement
Yes.
at first, but when we think about it, it's about the choices that we make, and the choices that we make can free us or chain us. And so
Exactly.
again, wearing my hypnotherapist hat, that's the work that we do, is to bring the compassion, the understanding, so that we can then say, okay, I accept that I cannot change this. I'm going to make peace with it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that
Yes.
that pattern is broken. And that it's that choice, that moment where we choose to say, okay, yep, it sucks. It's really horrible. And very, very painful. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
totally agree.
chained and trapped in this. I'm going to perhaps look at it from a different perspective, or just not suppress it, not ignore it, but just get on with some other things until I have the ability to bring the completely.
Exactly. 10 years later, you might be wise enough or strong enough or learn it enough to resolve it. Also, what I always say, that the distance is important, because when you distance yourself from the problem, you give it a perspective that you don't have when you are in the middle of it.
And we all have those periods in life
Oh, yeah.
that are absolutely horrible.
Horrible. Yes.
And
you know what I always say? I always say, this is not my life at the moment.
yeah, yeah, it's not mine. But
This is not mine. I do it because I have to, but it's not my life.
It's bringing to mind different things, but it's yeah, we have those horrible moments and they don't make any sense. We can't see why we're having to endure this horrendous experience. It could take 15-20 years before we can look back
Yes.
and say, didn't enjoy that much, wouldn't want to go there again, but it's given me this. And the moment where we can say, okay, it's given me this, okay, we can make peace with that. But the choice, I did something recently. Somebody had been leaving some very foul notes on our car. Sometimes people are a little bit bizarre. They didn't like the fact that the car, which was perfectly legally parked, was parked in a particular place. And I still can't fathom what the issue was, but leaving some very nasty notes. And then they just stopped because they realized actually we weren't feeding that. We were just
That's
ignoring.
so important. Oh, I'm getting all these notes as well. And sometimes, I mean, out of the blue, on Easter Sunday, I was getting a really nasty email from someone with a curse and anything. And I was like, okay, I didn't know this woman. I didn't do anything to this woman. And still, so, and yeah, I mean, and I didn't answer. I just deleted the whole thing and I didn't even look back. But this is something very similar
It,
that
yeah, and
yeah,
it's that choice, isn't it? Because after a period of months, a note was left again. So there was nothing. And then for months and months, I think over 6 months, and then there it was again. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't want this. And we've had so many windy days, very windy days. And I just watched as the wind lifted it. And I thought, I'm not that.
perfect.
And
You took care of it.
I'm so not a person to allow litter to be
Exactly.
anywhere. But on that occasion, I made a conscious choice to let it go with the wind.
Brilliant.
And
Yes.
never again. There wasn't another one. And so this is what we're talking about. It's like you deleted those nasty that nasty message. And it's the absolute choice of saying, this is a level of nastiness that I don't
I
need
don't
to.
know exactly, but you see, this is the same issue how you can tackle karma, difficult karma, because it's exactly this. Sometimes I'm not saying you shouldn't try. You always have to try because, and actually, the meaning of any karmic issue is the fact that yes, you come again, and yes, you can try it again. That's the brilliance of it. And that's why what I always say that if you can't resolve it now, you will come back and resolve it maybe later or 10 years from now or a couple of days from now. It doesn't have to be, everything doesn't have to be now.
It takes that strength to say, okay, I accept and I let go.
Oh, yes.
And from the my therapy perspective, it's such it's an act of courage and strength to even begin to examine it.
Oh, yes.
And then to come to that point of acceptance is the liberation.
Yes, and when you started talking about your regression sessions, I do regressions as well. But I thought what you meant was that sometimes we have an issue and we are absolutely sure that yes, I was being raped or I was being murdered or I was being tortured or something. And then what happens in the regression, all of a sudden, the person sees him or herself as the torturer, as the rapist. And that is a very revealing moment because with karmic issues, it's almost never just one side. We live both sides of the same coin. We try and we come and go and we try to understand what the mechanics of such a karmic issue is. But usually people don't want to look at the dark side. They look at the sufferer, the victim. And when I see it from their charts that, okay, yes, you were the victim, but you were also the perpetrator a couple of times. And that is why it became such a big, heavy karma because you simply couldn't let it go either way. You wanted to punish the perpetrator, and then you were suffering because you felt ashamed, and then you went back. So this karmic bouncing back and forth. And then when they see it for themselves, they experience it in a regression. And all of a sudden they realize that, oh, I see. Now I see. And then they can let it go.
That brings in issues of guilt and shame
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, which it's very difficult. And oftentimes it's not about being directly the perpetrator of, but it's the guilt over what was not done.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, I remember Howard Sport is referring to it as sins of omission.
Yes.
And it's the sins of omission that also can weigh us down very heavily. I mean, we only need to think about how when we lose someone we love, we torture ourselves with the, if only I had done this, if only I had done that. So these are incredibly complex issues. And as an example of what you were saying about perpetrator or victim, if we look at Pluto in a chart, we can say, oh, that's a really nastily aspected Pluto. No wonder they went on to do this, this, and this. On
Mm,
the other hand, we could see exactly the same configuration in
exactly.
regard to people who've experienced that
Exactly.
use
Exactly. And you see, this is what I always try to explain to my clients, that it is the choice you are making. There's always a choice, free choice, that how are you going to utilize an experience, no matter how horrible or bad it is? It's then your choice to say, okay, fine. Am I going to enter the darkness, or am I going to turn towards the light? Sorry, I mean, but you understand what I mean. So it's like a metaphor, really, because
yeah.
it's sometimes, like in Star Wars, it's very, very easy to give in to the dark side of the Force. Yeah, because it sucks us in, especially with Pluto on the ascendant. Yes.
So again, this is why the asteroids and the centaurs are adding more to the story,
Yes,
because they're helping us to recognize these patterns
exactly.
that are so big that we can only think of them as being karmic. But then within the story comes the understanding and the opportunity to be free, to break the pattern.
Yes.
No more Groundhog Day.
Exactly. Exactly.
Good. Well, Zsuzsanna, I am really looking forward to your talk on the
Thank you.
20th.
So am I.
And just remind everyone that this is online. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The time is 10 to 4:30 London time. However, for those of you in California who are going to find that rather challenging because of the difference in time, it is being recorded. So do still make the connection. I'll be putting a link in the description box so that you can all join. It's not too late. Hurry. Zsuzsanna, if people want to find you and your work, how do they do that?
Uh, Through email, it's the easiest way.
Okay, so there's no website.
I'm located both in England and in Hungary. My main residence is Budapest, Hungary, and I love being here. I love this city. I love this place, but I love London equally. So I'm going back and forth, and every 3-4 weeks I'm going to London anyway.
So would I be putting your email in the
That's
description box?
perfect. Thank you very much.
Lovely. I will certainly do that. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. For those of you who are new to astrology and want to learn more, I am starting a course for beginners in May. I hope that to see you then or at the wonderful seminar on the 20th of April. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.